Well, hello everyone and welcome. We are so glad to have you here at our financial literacy session. My name is Andrea Baker. I am the treasurer for the Graduate Student Government, and welcome to all of you new grad students. We're so excited to have you here. Today we are joined by the wonderful Sydney Mymet, who works in our financial literacy office, or she's the financial literacy program director, and she works in financial aid. So today, this is our agenda. We'll be covering graduate financial aid, some scholarships and awards, student employment options, just general financial literacy tips, a little bit of tax information, some resources on what to do if times get hard, and then just some next steps you want to take. Right. Sydney, would you like to take it away?
Sure, absolutely. So thank you so much for joining us today, everybody. I really appreciate you all being here. As Andrea mentioned, we will be recording this session. So if you have questions on anything we talked about today, there'll be an easy way to link back on that. So we'll get everybody that information after today. But just to go ahead and dive right in, as Andrea mentioned, I am the Financial Literacy Program Director. I work in the One Stop Center on the Uptown campus. Normally, right now I am at home, all things considered, but I am in the Uptown office, and so is the rest of our team. So just to go ahead and jump right in, I want to start by talking just very high level about federal financial aid. So I hope that everybody is aware, but just in case you're not, studentaid.gov, I specifically highlighted that there because this is the mecca for all things federal student aid. When you're applying for federal student aid on the front end, as well as managing any loans that you're taking throughout, and then managing loan repayment if you're taking, federal student loans after graduation. So save that, remember it, get to know it. Studentaid.gov has a lot of good resources. So if you are not sure where to really begin with financial aid, the very first thing is to file a FAFSA. Oh, sorry, Andrea, can we go back one? I've got a couple other things on that slide. You're okay. So the FAFSA has to be filed every year, and the information provided on your FAFSA is what's going to be used to determine your financial aid eligibility. And we're going to dive into all different kinds of loans and financial aid here in just a little bit, but just to know that it has to be done every year. If you run into any sticky situations, if this is the first time filing your FAFSA, you'll see off to the side some tips for how to answer some of the questions, because those will sometimes trip students up. So just make sure that you utilize those tips and resources throughout, and make sure you're answering all the questions to the best of your ability. If you do have questions while you're filing the FAFSA, our office is here to help. You'll see some contact information later in the slides, but basically you just want to contact the One Stop Center. Another big thing especially for graduate students, that I want to point out is that for all students, your financial aid is going to be split over the terms in which you are enrolled. So if you are in a program where you are primarily taking classes just for the fall and spring semesters, that's how your financial aid will be split. If you are attending or in a program where you're taking classes all year round, your financial aid would be split for fall, spring, and summer. This trips up a lot of graduate students because they're thinking, okay, I'm just doing this one semester at a time, but it's just not the case on how we do that. So just keep that in mind. Any financial aid that you're taking is going to be split over all the terms in which you're enrolled. So just keep that in mind. Separate from federal financial aid, I just want to go ahead and throw it out there while we're talking about kind of bill payment, using funds to get your bill paid. UC does offer a tuition payment plan. There is still time to enroll in that tuition payment plan for the fall semester. The deadline for that is September the 8th. And we can certainly talk more about that offline if you've got questions about that tuition payment plan. But really just to know that it does exist. If you're paying any portion of your bill out of pocket, you can utilize that tuition payment plan. Okay, so just to do a quick overview of financial aid. So you've got your FAFSA filed, that's completed. What happens next? So there are a couple aid sources that you must have a file for, or a FAFSA on file for, excuse me, and there are others that don't require that FAFSA. So we're going to talk through all those. So I mentioned that the data provided on your FAFSA is going to determine your financial aid eligibility. Generally speaking, graduate students aren't going to receive grant funds like a Pell Grant that you might have seen in your undergrad, but you could be awarded a need-based financial aid called Federal Work Study. And this is not something that's awarded to all students. It is awarded based on financial need. And it's basically funds that are set aside for you to earn through employment. So again, if you've got specific questions on that, we can talk through that. We're going to talk a little bit later about student employment and where to find opportunities as well, but just to kind of know what that looks like. Another big piece for your FAFSA is to look at any federal student loans. We're going to talk about different kinds, but for federal student loans, ones that basically you're taking from the Department of Education, you must file a FAFSA to be able to receive those. So there are primarily two different types. It's your unsubsidized and your Graduate Plus loans. We're going to dive deeper in a little bit, but really just to know that there are two different kinds and that they do have to be repaid. Those are loan funds that do have to be repaid, usually after you graduate. Okay, so just a quick run through of the other side of your screen there where we're walking through things that don't require that you file a FAFSA. You might have things like grants or fellowships that are awarded based on maybe research that you're doing for the university, scholarship money that's going to pay towards your bill, things like that. Those are generally awarded by your college department, your college office here at UC, and I'm going to turn it over in just a minute to someone else to talk a little bit more about those. Scholarships, these are merit-based funds, again, not repaid. These could be from UC, but also from some outside organizations. So we're going to talk about places to find scholarships as well. Graduate assistantships, these can be a variety of things. Again, it really kind of depends on your college office, on what's available, but there are some graduate assistantships on campus that are really just employment opportunities where maybe in addition to, a small paycheck that you're earning, a portion of what you're being paid is basically going to pay your bill. So those are a unique opportunity to take advantage of. Some are not specifically within your department. Like I know there was a student that I met probably a year ago who was working specifically with our McNair Scholar undergrad students. He's served as a graduate assistant for that department. So not specifically related to his area of study, but definitely something that he's doing at the university. So there's lots of opportunities on campus for things like that. Graduate fellowships, again, another one that's really kind of research focused, things like that. And then we're also going to dive deeper in a little bit about private loans. So we talked a minute ago about federal student loans. There are also private loans. So if you're coming up short on all the other things, a private loan might be an option. We're going to dive deeper for that in just a little bit. But at this point, I do want to go ahead, Andrew, if we can skip to the next slide. I do want to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Jenny, is it Heist? Right, I want to make sure I'm pronouncing Highest. Okay, who is the director in our Office of Nationally Competitive Awards office. And she's going to talk a little bit more about awards and fellowships and scholarships.
Thank you. I am going to go ahead and share a presentation that I've prepared for you. Let me see if I can get this pulled up.
And while Dr. Highest is pulling that up, I just wanted to add that the graduate student government also offers some awards in support of research that we can talk about later. I think Andrea is going to be talking about those later. And then also that the best place to find announcements for those graduate fellowships and assistantships is often the Grad Currents newsletter that is sent out by the grad school. So everybody should definitely check that in their inbox because that is where you will see postings for those intra-departmental GA opportunities. So sorry to interrupt, Dr. Highest. Let me turn it over to you.
Yes, and actually that's a great segue because I often advertise award opportunities through that same newsletter. So a lot of great resources. Definitely be reading that. I know semesters get busy and sometimes it's easy to skip those emails, but do check into those for sure. Can I get a thumbs up if you can see my slide? Okay, great. So as I've already been introduced, my name is Jenny Highest. I'm the director of UC's Office of Nationally Competitive Awards. I'll start by explaining what that office is. We are here to support all UC students, including graduate students who are interested in applying for external fellowship opportunities. So these are things that do not come through UC. These are things that you would go into a national pool to compete for. And our goal is to meet students who are interested in applying as early as possible, to help prospective candidates develop as such, understand the opportunities that are there, what they need to do to become competitive. And then when the time comes, we're there to offer support as you apply for these award opportunities. So what exactly do we mean when we call something a fellowship? Sometimes this word can mean different things in different contexts. But fellowships vary quite widely in terms of their purpose, but they are, again, externally funded awards that provide students with really transformative opportunities. So these could vary quite widely in terms of what these opportunities are. Some of these things provide support for research, others promote cultural exchange. There are some that will allow you to study a foreign language, especially critical need languages. And there are some opportunities to teach English abroad, just to name just a few. So as you can see, it's a pretty broad term. And we in our office use it pretty interchangeably with other terms such as scholarship, grant, program, or award. So you will go into different venues and maybe see meaningful differentiation between something like fellowship versus scholarship. But again, for our purposes, you'll find opportunities using all of these terms through the awards that we're supporting in our office. So what is NCA here to do? Well, I've already gestured toward that a little bit, but we're here to help you develop as a candidate. We're here to educate you on the opportunities that are available. We are also a source of writing workshops. We offer these points throughout the year, so workshops on crafting effective personal statements and grant proposals. We're also pretty good readers of your materials. We're here to provide feedback when you're working on one of the awards supported by our office. And in fact, I think that's a big part of what we do. We're in Fulbright season right now, which I'll talk in a minute about what Fulbright is, but we're reading a lot of essays right now and sending them back to our candidates. And then for the awards that have a campus process, there are some awards that require UC to be involved in the review process or selection process. We manage that as well. The best thing that you could do is actually visit this website that's here to get started. That is www.uc.edu/NCA. That will take you to my office's website. And I encourage you to spend some time on that website, read through the information that's on the different tabs, and then you will focus especially on the list of core and priority awards. Those are the awards that NCA currently works with. So if there's an award that's on that list, we provide advising services for that award. I would like to highlight a few of the awards that might particularly interest this audience. The first up is the Fulbright U.S. Student Program, which I just mentioned. This is one of our favorites here at UC because it is such a big program and there are so many opportunities for students coming from different disciplines, different backgrounds with different professional and career and academic goals. They offer over 2,200 grants each cycle to over 140 countries that participate. It's a cultural exchange program. These grants last 8 to 10 months, and they allow you to teach English or conduct an independent research project. This is open to US citizens who have not yet completed their doctorate at the time that they apply. So you can apply in the last year of your doctorate. And you can graduate and have that doctorate by the time you go on the award. You just cannot have the doctorate in hand at the time that you apply. There's also the NSF GRFP, National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program. You can see why they go by the acronym. It is funding for 3 years of grad study in research-based master's programs, as well as doctoral programs in STEM and STEM education. You apply for this in your first or second year of grad school. You can only apply in one of those 2 years, so you have to pick which one you want to do it in. You only get one shot at it while you are a grad student. You do get to apply before you've enrolled in grad school, and then arguably you could apply as many times as you wanted before you actually went to grad school, but once you are in, you can only apply once, so you have to choose carefully. And this also is open to US citizens and permanent residents. I will note here, unfortunately, that citizenship element is a theme across these 4 that are here, especially for graduate students. There are a lot of funding opportunities that are funded through often federal government and US taxpayer money, and so often there are citizenship requirements. That doesn't mean that every award out there has that restriction, but it's something to keep an eye on and be sure that you're checking with these awards, with all awards, the eligibility requirements at the beginning to meet before you get too excited or go too far down the path of envisioning yourself applying for a particular award. See if you meet the basic eligibility requirements. The Boren Fellowship is the next one that I want to highlight for you. This is funding to conduct research outside of the places listed there, and basically places where there's a lot of English spoken or languages that are spoken that are pretty commonly taught in the US, things like French, Spanish, German. So you get to spend up to an academic year there while studying a less commonly taught language. This is very popular among students who are engaged in graduate research because they can craft their research project, they get to do their language study, they sometimes get to have internships. It's a really amazing award. They have just increased the amount of money that they give. So really, I think if you get this award, you can expect your experience to be fully funded without a problem. You apply in your, that's a holdover from the NSRT RFP. You can apply it in a year as long as you are a currently matriculated student when you apply and when you hold the fellowship. So you have to be currently enrolled in classes while you go on your research year. And this is for US citizens who are committed to working for the federal government. So it does come with that service obligation. Often that's not an obligation, that's considered a feature or an asset for the students who want to apply. And in fact, sometimes coming to this award can open up possibilities for future career paths. Maybe you hadn't thought about working for the federal government and hadn't considered how your major could, or your degree, your area of study could feed into that. And this can be a way of exploring that opportunity, but you get non-competitive hiring status. So it's a real boon to have the Boren Fellowship, especially if that's a route that you want to go down. And then if you want to study a critical need language, so again, one of those languages that's less commonly taught in the US, but maybe you aren't that committed to working for the federal government, or you're not sure if you're up for spending at least a semester, if not a full year abroad, then the Critical Language Scholarship could be a great way to go. That's a fully funded summer overseas language and cultural immersion program. It lasts about 8 weeks. And they say that you develop in that 8-week program of what the equivalent of 1 year worth of collegiate study of one of their 14, I think it's actually up to 15 now. I think they added Portuguese, that was their 15th language, of their 15 critical need languages. This also is a program that's for US citizens. I also want to highlight that you can look for other opportunities as well, because NCA is a pretty small office. We do have to limit the scope of our advising services to the awards that are listed on our website, that website that I referred you to earlier. However, there are many award opportunities out there that would fall under the umbrella term of nationally competitive. You would want to do your research and find some opportunities that are out there that could be right for you. I would like to particularly recommend this tool to you. I think the University of Illinois Fellowship Finder is a really great resource. They do a pretty good job of maintaining that site. It's not easy to maintain a database and make sure everything stays up to date, and I think they do a good job of it. It's also quite flexible as a search tool. You can identify yourself as a master's student. It's broken down by the stages that you're in for your PhD, and so you can really narrow in on options that are available for you that might work to support your needs. So I think this is a great resource. My best advice to you is think about your grad school trajectory in terms of stages and find awards appropriate to your stage. So think about, are you early career? Are you just getting started? Are you looking ahead? At some point, will you need funding for dissertation research? At some point, will you need funding for dissertation completion? And those are actually two different categories of awards that are out there. And so really be looking ahead, think ahead, plan ahead. Things creep up on you and come up more quickly than you expect. So it's good to take a really long view when you're in grad school and kind of plan out over the years when you think you might be moving through your stages and when you might be wanting to apply for certain kinds of awards. That feeds right into my next piece of advice: plan ahead. So plan ahead in that sense that I just described, but also when you're looking at the awards, don't just look at the date when they're due, but also look at when they're open to get a sense of when you would actually be working on that. I've got Fulbright in my mind right now because we just had the campus deadline today, but that's a great example. There is a campus process. So if somebody just went in and really quickly looked at Fulbright, they would think, okay, well, that's not due to early October. And they could file that away in their mind and in their memory in that way. But they can lose sight of the fact that Fulbright requires a mandate in our on-campus process. And in order to accommodate that, we have to have an intent to apply deadline in early August and campus materials due later in August. And so if somebody was thinking, well, October, they could be jumping in a little too late. And besides that, they would have deprived themselves the opportunity of putting together probably a truly strong application, which requires multiple drafts and is often best worked on over the course of the summer. So definitely plan on that level as well. And then the final piece of advice that I have, and this is probably something you all know because you've made it this far and gotten into graduate school, but really develop mentoring relationships with faculty in your field. Those are really important. And those are the folks who are going to be writing letters for you, for these awards, for other things. So make sure that you're cultivating those. And beyond that, beyond the practicalities of you'll need letters of recommendation, that's just a great way to really get to know your field and what it means to develop as a scholar or as a professional in the field that you are in. So I'm happy to send these links. That was the end of my quick presentation there. I'm certainly happy to make some of these links available to you all. And any questions? I know I can't stay on to the end of the session, but if anybody has a question.
I actually had just a couple. I guess the first one is, you mentioned a lot of awards for those who are U.S. citizens. I wondered if you had some advice for non-U.S. citizens. Where would you start a search? Where would you, where would you recommend that they start looking, maybe at the University of Illinois or their faculty advisor? How would a non-U.S. citizen go about maybe accessing some of the awards that we see? And my second question is, at what point, because you put those 4 awards up there that you tend to give advising to, at what point in the process is it a good idea to contact your office for an advising session when we're sort of contemplating the years ahead? What point in that process do you think it's good to contact or reach out? And those are my 2 questions. Thank you so much.
Thanks for those great questions. To answer your first one, I would say that University of Illinois search tool, as you suggested, is really the way to go because you can identify citizenship there and search by that. And so that way it's bringing up opportunities that would already work for you as an international student. And so I think that's the best way to go. We have that all for the awards that are on our website. We have that all clearly marked there. But I think that's one of the great things that's really functional about the Illinois tool. So that's how I would recommend approaching that. And plus, again, we mentioned faculty mentors. They're a great resource as well. Finding out what they've applied for over the years. That can be a great way to go. They should hopefully have their finger on the pulse of the award opportunities that are maybe really specific to your discipline, to your field. And then your other question, I would say definitely connect with my office as early as possible. You can fill out the NCA intake form, which is on the NCA website that I referred you to. Also, I am available on Starfish. I am associated with all 46,000 UC students. So I am the one constant, I think, in everyone's advising portal. So you can access my calendar through there. I think you'll find that right now in the immediate next couple of weeks ahead, it might be kind of hard to get on my calendar just because so much is blocked off to manage the Fulbright process right now. I think we've got about 23 students going through the campus review process. So not a lot of availability, but things slow down for me a little bit as we get into later September. And I'd say at any point that you want to come chat with me, it's always good to schedule an appointment, fill out a form. That enters you into our database, so we're able to keep track of you, and we can know the awards that you're looking in. into and considering, and so we can certainly help you map out your time. But I'd say the first best step, and the thing that I will advise every student to do as soon as they booked their appointment, is to make sure before we have that first meeting, they read through the awards that are listed on the site. We have a lot of information on the website about the individual awards. Overall, the website is a work in progress where we are overhauling that. But when you get into the core and priority awards, that's, I think, the one thing that is pretty solid. And so you can read a lot about the awards. It's heavily linked to each scholarship zone website. And so I think it's also a great way into those scholarship websites. They can be sometimes a little bit overwhelming to navigate, but we tried to link heavily to connect you to that. And also you get a lot of information about the campus processes. Again, keep going back to Fulbright. If you went on there, you can find links to information sessions. We had a UC Fulbright week back in the spring. We host that every year. If you really wanted to get yourself into thinking about Fulbright at the outset, I would go on there and watch the Intro to Fulbright session that we recorded. That is going to be the most current information that we have right now. So it would be a little too late to apply for this cycle, but you could watch that, learn the basics. We have deep dive sessions on the 2 different main grant types. If you even really wanted to get in there and watch, we recorded online writing workshops for the different documents, the statement of grant purpose and the personal statement. So you could really dive in there and learn a lot before we even meet.
Thank you so much. Does anyone else have any other questions for Dr. Highest? All right, well, thank you so much for joining us. That was wonderful information. I'm just going to go back to sharing over here, moving on. And while we are on the subject of some of the awards that the GE Graduate Student Government has to offer you. I'm going to move my screen up here. Sorry about that. Okay. All right. So as your graduate student government does have some awards that can help you throughout your graduate career. Our biggest thing that we do is the Support Conference Travel Awards. And so you are eligible for up to $500 as a presenter per fiscal year to present at conferences to advance your career, and up to $200 as a non-presenter. We also offer research fellowships awards, and all the details, more details for these can be found on our website. And that can be up to $1,500, often $1,200 depending on what the area is. And that's to provide assistance with travel or research related materials for purchase. And then every year we do an Excellence Awards cycle, and these are by nomination, and they have a monetary prize. And then every year a graduating student, master's or doctoral, is eligible to be the recipient of the Presidential Medal of Graduate Student Excellence. So along your way, the graduate student government is also here to support you through some awards. And with that, I'm going to pass it on back to Sydney.
All righty, thank you for that. I hope everybody got a lot of good information out of that from Dr. Highest. That was very good information. So just to do kind of a wrap up on scholarships before we move forward. As she mentioned, there are scholarships, many that are coming from within University of Cincinnati. We heard about the Illinois search tool. I'm definitely going to make sure that we link that on our One Stop website. And we are linking, if you want to look at all things financial on the One Stop website, we do link to the Office of National Competitive Awards as well. So there is a page in there specifically for graduate students that encompasses everything they discussed today, but then some additional pieces as well. So just to share that that's an added resource. So generally scholarships could be coming from University of Cincinnati in some shape or form, and could be coming from private organizations or groups as well. Generally, these are merit-based, so based on test scores, GPA, maybe there's an essay or an added piece that there is to take a look at. Specifically in Catalyst, and this is new, so I want to point it out. When you log into Catalyst, you see a whole bunch of different tiles on your screen. Academics, finances. A new one that's out there is the scholarship search tile. So this kind of encompasses all kinds of scholarships that are in there. Those are vetted, you know, they're legitimate. You're not paying for scholarship resources. or, a scholarship search engine. So that's definitely a place. If you haven't, make sure you check that out and see what scholarships you might be eligible for there. Again, I mentioned our one-stop website. We do have some additional scholarship resources. We've tried to kind of sort everything out in a user-friendly way, but we are, always open to ideas and suggestions. So let us know if there are things that are missing that we need to include. But those are two big resources for finding scholarship. And then again, just to kind of drive home to really be mindful of deadlines and any restrictions related to scholarships. I really like that Dr. Hayes pointed out that, not only look at when the deadline to apply is, but when it opens, so that you can go ahead and start collecting any necessary documents, completing any steps that might be required to get that scholarship in. I think we can move ahead from here. So one thing I want to point out, and this is kind of getting real deep into policy. So if you want to talk more about this one-on-one, we definitely can, but I at least wanted to bring it to everybody's attention. So a lot of graduate students, especially towards the end of their career, if they run into this issue, they always ask, when was I told about this? When was I made aware of this rule for credit hours and UC scholarship funds? So I just want to read you through this policy to make you aware kind of as you're starting out or maybe halfway through your journey at graduate, in your graduate program here at UC, of this 174 credit hour rule, so that you're aware. And again, if you have concerns about it, we can talk offline, but just to make you aware. So graduate students who've attempted 174 graduate credit hours at UC are not eligible for a university award above 174 hours. So basically what that means is you have a 174 hour cap, the maximum that you can receive in UC awards, so UC scholarship money. So this does include classes that you received a scholarship for, but then later withdrew from, audited courses or anything that are in progress or incomplete. So if you were in one program of study and have switched and you completed classes prior that maybe don't go towards this program, we see that, occasionally. So just really to make you aware that any hours you complete above and beyond that 174 hours, if you've used UC scholarship funds for all of that, then there wouldn't be the option to receive it above that 174. We've linked it here as well if you want to take a look at the graduate school handbook, just to kind of dig a little bit deeper into that policy, but that's kind of the high level overview of that 174 hour rule. Okay, so shifting gears a little bit.
Yes. To interrupt, but I just wanted to let you know that there was a little question in the chat, just clarifying that the 174 rule is just for graduates, not for undergraduate credits, correct?
So that is my understanding of it. I can definitely double check if you have a specific concern about hours, or to make sure that you're not getting close to that. If you received UC scholarship funds that covered all of your undergraduate, we could definitely take a look and get you a specific answer on that. But yes, that's my understanding of how that works. Is there any other questions on any of that, or really anything, I guess, that we've covered thus far? If so, you can drop them in the chat or just raise your little hand icon and we can make sure we don't skip over your question. Okay, so shifting gears a little bit to student employment. So Dr. Hayes talked a little bit about fellowships and kind of how that part works. We touched briefly on graduate assistantships, but just to dig a little bit deeper, graduate assistantships, like I said, they don't have to be specifically related to your area of study. So I mentioned the student prior who worked for a specific department. He generally dealt with our McNair scholars that were in their undergrad, and he was helping to facilitate everything that was needed for that program to run successfully. So that wasn't specific to his area of study, but he was provided a stipend that covered, is basically a stipend to cover, living expenses, things like that, just like a paycheck would. And then a partial scholarship that was covering a portion of the tuition costs. So every graduate assistantship is set up a little bit different. There may be ones that require that you teach, maybe more administrative positions. It really kind of varies depending on the needs of that department. But definitely take a look at the jobs.uc.edu that's listed here. I do want to be entirely transparent with everything related to COVID-19. There will be limited options. We're hopeful that things will start to become, more back to normal, or that as departments, departments adjust to more remote work and things like that. There will be more opportunities, but this is the best place to look for campus-based jobs. And, separate from graduate assistantships, any student worker positions, and this would include that federal work study that we talked about early on. One other thing I want to point out, if you are currently working, I know many students don't while they're in their graduate program, but if you are currently working, even if it's part-time, definitely take a look at your employer to see what options they might provide. There are a lot of employers that will offer some type of educational benefit that'll pay a portion of your tuition. Generally, they want to see your grades first, so it might be something that they'll pay after the semester has ended. But definitely take a look at that option. Even if you're working part-time, it's worth the ask for sure. Okay, so just to kind of give you an overview of some flexible options that you might have while you're trying to look for maybe a part-time opportunity while you're in school full-time. If you're looking at any of the kind of eateries on campus, if you didn't know, those positions aren't actually hired through University of Cincinnati. They're hired through an organization called Aramark. So we wanted to list that there. Even if you don't have a car, you might still be able to find delivery options and things like that through Favor is another one. Testing apps. If you do have a car, you could look at Uber or Lyft or DoorDash or any of those other Uber Eats, any of those other options that kind of provide delivery or kind of taxi service for people. So those are another option. It kind of lets you build your own flexible schedule. Fiverr is another one that's basically kind of odds and ends positions. So is Upshift, the very last one that's listed here. A variety of part-time gigs that could just be, brief, working on a project, and then that's it. Handshake is another one. This is specifically a UC resource, and the UC Career Center kind of coordinates this. But all UC students have a Handshake account where you can log in. So if you haven't checked it out, you should. It's a career platform where you're going to see positions that are open not only for students while you're still in school, but they do allow recruiters to put positions in there for opportunities after you graduate. So definitely a good resource to become familiar with. You can find some resume assistance and things like that in there. So definitely some good resources to make sure you become aware of. And again, we'll share the slide information afterwards. So you'll have all the links for all those options. Okay, so checking back in on financial aid. The two different types of federal student loans that I want to cover and make sure everybody has a good handle on are the unsubsidized loans and the Graduate Plus loans. The big differences between the two are the unsubsidized loan has a little bit of a better interest rate, and it does not require a credit approval, whereas the Graduate Plus loan is contingent on a credit check. So those are the big differences between the two. On both of those, you are not required to start making payments until 6 months before your enrollment drops below halftime. So basically what that means is generally it's 6 months after you graduate, but we want to make sure that graduate students are aware if there's a term where you're dropping below halftime. 5 credit hours is considered halftime for most graduate programs. But if you drop below that halftime requirement, your 6 month grace period, your 6 month grace period before repayment begins would go ahead and start. So I hope that's clear. If there are questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. But just to make sure that it's not just after graduation, but it's after your enrollment drops below halftime. I also want to point out on this slide about there we go. There is an annual limit on loans as well as a lifetime limit on loans. So the unsubsidized loans, like I said, these are the better ones. So you would want to take all unsubsidized loan money before you take any Graduate Plus loan money. So for unsubsidized loans, generally speaking, a graduate student's going to be offered $20,500 is the maximum that you're eligible to receive in unsubsidized loan money for that school year. So just so you're aware of why you're seeing that funky amount, that's a federal guideline. And then there is also a lifetime limit on graduate student loans. That's a big number. It's $138,500 is the maximum. Again, we just want to make sure that students are aware, especially if you are looking into a doctoral program. and you're borrowing student loans, even, especially if you're not working while you're in your program, it seems like a big number, but it can quickly add up if you're borrowing enough to not only cover your tuition, but to cover living expenses and things like that. So it's one reason why we want to have these presentations and conversations, so that we can get you graduated with the least amount of debt possible, make sure you're aware of as many resources are out there so that you avoid that big number, that graduate student loan number. We want to keep it as low as possible for you. Any questions before I move on from federal loans? Feel free to drop them in the chat if you do, but I'll keep moving on to talk a little bit about alternative loans. So these are a little bit different. These do not require that you complete a FAFSA, but alternative or private loans are loans that you would borrow specifically through a bank or credit union. In years past, it was always, borrow the federal student loans. That's your very first option. They have the best interest rate. But in recent years, private loans have become very competitive. So we do see some students that skip the federal loans altogether and just go directly to a private loan or private lender. So that's definitely an option. Some students will use the federal loan money, and then if they don't have enough, or they use the unsubsidized loan money and still need to make up a little bit of a difference, they'll go to a private loan for the difference. So really depends on what you want to look at, but really just to know that this is an option. The biggest thing on this that I can stress, though, is just to make sure you know what you're signing for when you sign that dotted line. So make sure you know what the interest rate is, what basically are they looking for with credit approval. These are generally not going to be like your unsubsidized loans that are guaranteed. These are going to be credit-based, so they'll run a credit check. What are they looking at in order to approve that? And what does repayment look like? We talked about how on your federal loans, you're not going to be required to make payments until 6 months after you drop below half time. But what are their options? Are they going to process the loan and you're required to make payments immediately? Is interest accruing immediately? What does that look like? So just make sure you know what you're signing for on those private loans. Okay, so shifting gears a little bit to talk about financial literacy, resources, tips. A lot of this, I think, is just kind of going back to the basics. It's not telling you anything that you don't already know, but just to give you a fresh reminder, but also to know that our office, the One Stop Center, we do serve as a resource for these other things too. So we not only want to make sure that you know how to borrow a student loan, but that you don't have to borrow the maximum, and to know that these other resources are out here for you to, again, graduate with the least amount of debt, to be fiscally responsible, and all of those things. So our website is here in red, the onestop.uc.edu/money. That is the best resource where we're going to talk about all the things that we're going to cover today. But that's the best place to find these financial literacy tips. So it goes without saying, but create a budget and stick to it. Making a plan for how you're going to spend your money is the easiest way to avoid overspending and over borrowing on these student loans. So consider an app if you haven't already. EveryDollar and Mint are just a couple that have free options. There are tons out there, so definitely take a look. Getting into the habit of saving, a lot of financial literacy experts will tell you to pay yourself first. So set money aside that you're going to need for a rainy day fund, just to make sure that that's there in case a car breaks down, a hot water heater breaks, something like that. But then to also kind of plan ahead for maybe just as close as the next semester. Maybe if you can save $1,000, that's $1,000 less in a student loan that you're borrowing, and utilize that payment plan if you can, and looking at options like that, or picking up an extra job or doing like a DoorDash or something like that. Even if you're not working, maybe pick it up on the weekends, or pick it up during breaks during school and things like that. So just looking at things a little bit differently can certainly go a long way. Definitely make sure that you're managing any credit card debt that you have and monitoring your credit. Making sure you know what interest rates you've got on credit cards, the importance of having a good credit score. We can dive a little bit deeper into that another day. But really just to make sure you're protecting your credit, you're not overspending, living within your means, not putting things on credit cards that you can't afford, just so you can go ahead and get whatever it is, just make sure you're mindful of those things. Protecting your identity, keeping good records, those are all very important. We know that most things are online, so making sure that you change your password often, and as tempting as it is, try not to store your password and credit card information online. That's super easy ways for identity thieves to be able to come in and get access to your information. So certainly protect yourself in that regard. We've talked a lot about scholarships and fellowships today, but I always tell students, treat applying for scholarships like a part-time job. Set yourself aside, a 3-hour window or something during the week where you can go in, or, for 30 minutes each night and say, okay, I'm going to work on these scholarship essays. I'm going to work on researching scholarships and, bookmarking them so that I can come back and complete those. That way that keeps you on top of it. So you're not missing deadlines. You're not missing, opportunities that are out there for free money. Definitely make a note of that, because that is money that it is earned. You're already putting the work in to get good grades and to successfully pass your classes. Definitely take advantage of that scholarship money there. I want to also bring your attention to a free tool that we have at the university. It's called Grad Ready. It's really neat. It's got videos and tools, little quizzes to keep yourself on track. It's a free resource that kind of gets you ready for not only time that you're here during your graduate program, but for life after grad school. So getting you ready for things like mortgages, auto loans, if you don't already have one, just helping steer you on the right path so that you can, make sure you're making those good choices now. You're building that good foundation to help better prepare you after graduation. Like I said, I mentioned our one-stop website, so that's certainly a resource that you can utilize. And I do want to draw attention as well to our social media. If you're not, it's just an easy way to get tips and reminders from us. If you're not already following us on Twitter and Instagram, make sure that you do. We promise not to spam you with a bunch of crazy things, but just to make sure that it's another resource that's out there, reminders of deadlines and important things that are coming up, bill due dates and things like that, for sure. Okay, so I'm going to talk just very briefly about tax information. I'm not a tax expert, but I will tell you what I know, and then also tell you where you can get some free assistance on taxes when the time comes. So we've talked about if there are some questions that maybe we would dive deeper into taxes in another session, maybe later in this year, but just to give you a high level overview of what options you might have as a graduate student regarding taxes. So there is a form, it's called the 1098-T form, that you're going to get in your Catalyst portal in January. Should be available by end of January. You can download it in Catalyst. So basically, this is your proof that you have attended University of Cincinnati and you've had taxable earnings that you can possibly file to get an education credit on your taxes from the university for this year, for the 2020 tax year. So this form will become available. You can download it there. Hang on to the form, because this is basically going to be your proof that you were here and that you should be eligible for those tax credits. We have had some tax prep assistance on campus before. If we have volunteers that are local to University of Cincinnati, then we will have that again in early 2021 to help people with filing their 2020 taxes. The best way to determine where those people are going to be, if we do have them on campus, great. If not, they will be very close to campus in the community. It's basically IRS's VITA program. That's the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. Again, this is linked, but if you want to make a note of that, this is available, generally speaking, for most college students. So I would definitely take advantage of that free tax help rather than paying for like an H&R Block, something like that. Definitely take advantage of that free tax assistance. So I know there was a question regarding non-US citizens will also receive the 1098-T. So I would definitely check in with a tax professional on whether or not you are required to file taxes. The university is required to provide all students with a 1098-T form, but I would definitely check with a tax professional on your specific circumstance if you are required to file. So just before we move on, I know Andrea is going to take over to discuss health insurance. Were there any other questions on taxes before we move on? If so, just throw them in the chat and then we can come back to them.
Thank you for answering my my non-U.S. citizen question. I would also add that the International Student Services Office could probably also answer some questions about taxes for international students as well.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Jan. All right, so I just want to talk to you all a little bit about health insurance. So UC does offer student health insurance, and it's available to all graduate students as long as you're enrolled in at least one credit. So that one credit is per semester, unless you are working on your dissertation, and then it's one credit per year. That makes you eligible to apply for the UC health insurance. So if you are enrolled in 6 or more credits, they automatically enroll you in this health insurance. And you may see in Catalyst when you're registering for classes and things, they ask you to either waive or accept. But if you are under that, you do have to go and enroll in the insurance. So all the student health insurance contact information is there. So for those of you who may be graduate assistants or fellows, and you earn at least $26.50 per semester, which for a graduate assistant is if you work 10 hours a week, you are eligible for essentially a discount on the UC student health insurance. So it's called the Graduate Student Health Insurance Award, but basically they will refund $826 of the cost of the health insurance per semester for you. And that deadline is coming up next week, September 7th. So if this applies to you, please apply for that award because it's a great way to save money on the UC health insurance. So I know that the health insurance is a little bit expensive. So for those who are domestic graduate students, many of you actually may qualify for Medicaid, which is government-sponsored health insurance for low income. And you apply for that in the state you are a resident. So I did include links to the Ohio Medicaid and the Kentucky Medicaid site there. If you're not sure, you can just go in and look at the eligibility. But if you do qualify, it's free. There's no cost there. So it oftentimes is actually cheaper than the UC student health insurance. And I've found a lot of times grad students aren't actually aware that that's even an option for them. And so I just want to transition. Does anybody have any questions about health insurance before I move on?
I do have a question. Oh,
Sure.
for those of us that have already made a payment for the health insurance, but then we find out that we are eligible for Medicaid and sign up for that, do you know if there will be any refund associated with that, or once
I'm not sure.
that? Okay.
I'm not sure. I would definitely contact the office, either email or phone number. We are still early in the semester, so it might be possible. So I would definitely check with them. But at the very least, you would qualify for January. So, you know what I mean? You can at least save money going forward.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I want to talk next about what to do maybe if you're in a situation where your funds have dried up and you're really struggling, because this is something that's really hard. So the university does offer some emergency fund support when times get tough. There are a few different pockets of money around the university. So first I'm going to talk about the Graduate Student Emergency Fund. So this is a new fund that's just been created. It's intended for returning graduate students. So I know that probably doesn't apply to most of you, but if you were here previously at UC and you're starting a new degree, or you're just here, this will be eligible for you. The application opens on September 10th. And this is a one-time fund of up to $580, depending on the tuition increase that happened for your specific department. And the website, the application's currently still being written, so that will be on the same website as the Bearcat Emergency Fund and the Student Emergency Fund. I also want to talk a little bit about the International Student Emergency Fund. So this is specifically for international students, and the application process is a little bit larger. This is for extreme and unforeseen economic hardship. So the awards are typically limited to $5,000. They can go over. So these are if you have lost your sponsor or things have happened back in your home country and the funding that you were intending to receive didn't happen, there is a space to support you. So I hope that you never need this fund, but please know that it is there, and that is a link to it as well. And then I believe, Sydney, you wanted to talk a little bit about the Bearcat Emergency Fund and Student Emergency Funds?
Yes, absolutely. So those two funds, as Andrea mentioned, there are limited funds at this time. With everything going on with COVID, we know that there have been a lot of students impacted, and there are a lot of emergency situations that the university is trying to assist students with. But really just these are two that are offered through the Dean of Students, just to make sure that you guys know that these resources are out here. And again, we'll make sure that you have these links so that you can take a look. Generally, they're both limited to $500. But just to know that these are funds, if you were to be awarded those don't have to be repaid. And they are for emergency situations. We also offer a short-term loan, if you didn't know, at University of Cincinnati. Again, this is kind of one of those emergency type situations because it does have to be repaid within 90 days. Generally, there's a limit of $2,000 and a $50 processing fee. But just to make sure that you're aware, this is something offered through the Office of the Bursar. But just to make you aware that those resources do exist for those couple things around emergencies. And then Chan, did you have, I saw some stuff going on in the chat where there's some questions that we wanted to discuss before we move from the slide?
Yes, thank you. We had a good question because we are seeing a number of students that are in their home countries and have lost their GA that was originally promised to them because they're not able to travel now. And now that they've lost that GA, that means that they would not be eligible for the GSHI. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Unfortunately, you do have to be currently fulfilling a GA position to qualify for the award. Any other questions? Okay, moving along then. All right, so the next thing I wanted to talk about is what to do if you are facing food insecurity. Once again, I hope that this is never a situation that you're in, but there are a lot of resources in the area to help, and that there is never a reason for you to be hungry or anybody you know to be hungry. So UC has something, it's an organization called the Bearcat Pantry, and it's an absolute wonderful organization. They provide food, hygiene, cleaning, clothing, and they also they can give out meal vouchers to the dining halls around campus. There's an application process on their website, but this is a UC provided resource for the UC community, and it is a wonderful resource to have. They've helped a lot of students, and there is no shame or embarrassment if you find that you're in a situation where you just can't afford your groceries. It happens, and this is just here to make sure that you have enough food, you have some toothpaste, you have what you need to continue being a student. I also put some links here to some of the other food assistance around the area. So there's the Freestore Food Bank and St. Vincent de Paul. These are both in Cincinnati. You can apply on their website. And then Be Concerned is one that's available in Kentucky. Some graduate students are also eligible for SNAP, which is a government food assistance program. It's income-based, kind of like Medicaid. So with this, basically they give you a debit card that you can use at grocery stores on certain types of grocery items. So that is another place to go for help with groceries and things like that. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Sorry, I just wanted to add that I have utilized all of these resources with the exception of Be Concerned because I do not live in Northern Kentucky. And I put my personal email into the chat. You can reach there, or you can reach me at the vice president email that's associated with the GSG. But again, I know that there are cultural stigma, and you mentioned that there could be a taboo or some shame associated with this. But to be honest, everyone is dealing with the COVID issue. But even just being a graduate student in general is a really I think faculty expected to be sort of a trial by fire. And I don't think they realized how cost of living has changed. And this is a reality. A lot of our grad students are living in poverty, and we can help each other. And the pantry is a great example of that. We have grad students that volunteer for it, but we also have grad students that utilize it. And sometimes it's not so much that I don't have any food, but it might be that I could use the Freestore Food Bank or the Bearcat Pantry and use that to get some of the supplemented grocery items so that I can then use the money I would have spent on food to maybe pay my electricity bill or something like that. So juggling things around. So if anybody has any questions or concerns or just wants to talk about it, again, I put my personal email in the chat. So sorry to interrupt.
No worries. I really appreciate it, Chan. Like I said, there's, being a graduate student is really hard. your classes are tough enough. And then on top of that, cost of living, taking care of everything. It really, it is a challenge, mentally and financially a lot of the time. And that's why we as a graduate student government are really focusing a lot on mental health and then financial health as well, because those two really go hand in hand. And these are just some resources that can make it a little bit easier. All right, so moving along, I'm gonna just pass it back to Sydney here.
So quickly before we wrap up, and we do want to allow some time for questions and conversation wherever that leads us. But I did want to leave you with a couple little nuggets of advice before we wrap up today. If I can stress nothing else today, it's to make sure that you're meeting all of your application deadlines. So as Dr. Hayes said, make sure that you know not only when that scholarship opens, when does it close, make sure that you're following all of those pieces and things that are set out there before you miss a deadline. Only take the classes that are required for your degree. Make sure that you're working with your college, make sure you're working with your department, your advisor, whoever it is that's helping you along this path towards graduation. Because taking classes, as silly as it seems, and it seems like they're not always connected. We talked a little bit earlier about how taking classes that aren't required or taking classes outside of your degree program can impact your financial aid. So make sure that you're aware of that. Investigating other sources of financial aid. We talked about all the scholarship resources. The Illinois fellowship resource is another one. Like I said, I'm going to make sure we put that on our website. Just to make sure that you know what's out there. The scholarship search tool on Catalyst, taking advantage of where there's free money, and as well as those campus and community resources, the Bearcat Pantry, other community resources to help get you covered. This is such a difficult time just in the world, but also to be a person who's trying to go back to school full time and maybe not working. So definitely take advantage of what's out there and borrow as little as possible. I know that it sounds crazy, and who has time to sit down and keep applying for these scholarships? It's easier just to take, the greater amount of the student loan, but as much as you can, borrow the minimum, because those are going to accrue interest, and we want to keep you the least amount of debt as possible. Another quick piece I want to note is, as crazy as this sounds, the FAFSA is going to open in about a month for next school year. So go ahead and save the date that's there in red, October 1st of this year. So a little over a month from now, the FAFSA for the 21-22 school year will be open. So make sure that you go ahead and apply, just so you can check that off of your list. Some scholarships do want to see your FAFSA information, basically to determine your financial need. And things like federal work study, those are limited. There are not unlimited, federal work study funds. So it is not too late to apply for the FAFSA for this year. So if you are interested, go ahead, complete your FAFSA. Make sure you're doing the one. There should just be one that's out there right now for you to be able to apply for the 2021 school year, but definitely save the date for the October 1st to apply for 21-22. All these 20s are going to mix me up here, but okay, so that's pretty much it. I do want to go ahead and turn it over for questions. Here's my name and information if you need to reach out on anything related to the topics we discussed today. Graduate student government will get you the information as well. We'll make sure to share this electronically. Again, my name is Sydney Myman. I'm the program director of our financial literacy program for the One Stop Student Services Center. And I'll turn it over for questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sydney. As you can probably all tell, she knows just about the answer to everything. So really a wonderful resource to have at the beginning of your UC career. I wish there were things I had known, a few years ago. So you definitely have a legs up by being here in this session. So yes, if anybody has any questions, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask, or type it in the chat.
And if it's not something, I know money is funny. So if it's not something you feel comfortable asking today, just look me up, shoot me an email, and we can talk, offline about this, or you can always call the One Stop Center. The nice thing with the One Stop office is all of our staff are cross-trained. So as Andrea said, I know a lot of things, but so does our team. So we are happy to help guide you with any questions you have related to money. And if we don't know the answer, we've probably got the question before, so we probably know where to send you to get the answer. So there was a question about letting go of an apartment this semester to save money. So if it's on-campus housing, I can't speak for them, but I know that they're being very lenient with people getting out of their housing contracts, specifically with everything going on with COVID. I would definitely take advantage if you have another place to be, or if you can, stay with family, things like that. Okay, so this is talking about commuting from Cleveland. So that's a really far drive. So if you have to be here in person, it's really a personal choice. It's up to you. If you know that you're really going to be online, I think what COVID has taught us, if nothing else, is there is a lot of opportunity for us to leverage technology to get done what we need to get done. And I know that with all the circumstances, everybody is really flexible during this time. So I'm sure that if you are pretty much attending and completing all of your coursework and doing everything related to your program virtually, you could definitely talk with a landlord, or if it's through university housing, to talk about breaking a lease or what that looks like. Again, it's kind of a personal choice, but if it were up to me and I had the option and I knew I was going to be attending primarily remote anyway, I would definitely look at the option that saved me the most amount of money.
Yeah, and I would add that I think a lot of people are going through this exact same dilemma. And so there's a few things to keep in mind. That, first of all, the cases of COVID on campus are rising. That's been documented. And they're rising in the Clifton neighborhood of the 52 Cincinnati neighborhoods. So the hybrid, at the very least, the hybrid will stay most likely for spring. I'm not exactly sure, but I think it will. And it may even go completely online by spring. We also have the issue that I think it's around, what did he say the other day, Andrew, like 4,000 international students that are not able to come to campus. And that means that's 4,000 UC students around that number that are not looking for off-campus off-campus housing. So I would say it's probably a good wager that come January, if the situation changes and you do need to find housing down here, it's likely that you might be able to. And so the last thing I would direct you to is, we have some websites, UC Sublets, UC Rentals. There's a bunch of they're all like UC based for other UC students looking for roommates. And the GSG, the Graduate Student Government, we're trying to figure out a good way to connect to graduate students so that we can, look for roommates, sublets, that sort of thing. And that it would be a calculation, right? Like, how much would you save this semester by giving up your apartment versus how amazing is the apartment and how much do you want to keep it for next semester? And my argument would be that, if it's like in a house or something, there's a dime a dozen for those. Like, there's so many rooms in houses that are basically kind of crappy and around the same price. So you could probably give it up for that reason. But obviously, like Sydney said, it comes down to a personal choice. But I just wanted to give you a little perspective because I happen to be going through a similar situation right now. So
yeah, that's a very important perspective. And I think, as Chan mentioned, again, it's kind of your personal choice. But if your question for us as like university personnel is what's spring going to look like, at this point, it's been everybody's quote of the last 6 months. It's a fluid situation. But as Chan mentioned, the way that things are going, and given that it's already end of August, you can probably anticipate that spring is going to look very similar to fall. We'll know more in the coming months. And generally speaking, students are able to register for the spring semester in October. So you'll be able to see, what classes are out there what the mode of instruction will be. So that'll give you an insight here in probably the next month. When those spring classes are made available in Catalyst for you to look at, if that's helpful with making your decision. Is there questions on anything else? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's a great point that, we do start registration in October, so you can kind of see, the writing on the wall, because you'll know that, things will be online. But I mean, I think if you look at some of the other indicators, right? So the COVID committee that meets every day, they're reporting the rising cases, the isolation areas. I mean, they're going to fill up if we keep going at the rate that we're going. And I just think that you're right, Sydney. I think it's going to look very similar to what it does now. But as you said, Patrick, you could probably wait to the October registration to make that choice.
Do we have questions on anything else? Anything we covered today or anything we didn't that you have questions on? Anything related to money and stuff like that? Let me scroll back up and make sure I didn't miss anything.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Isaac, a PhD industrial hygiene student from Ghana. I applied for the Bellcat Everywhere Scholarship, but I've not heard from them. I'm currently in Ghana. So what can I do?
Isaac, you said you're currently in Ghana, but could you repeat the question? It was a little difficult to hear.
Yeah, I said I applied for the Bellcat Everywhere Scholarship, but I've not gotten any response yet.
Yeah, because I think update on the Bearcat there. I'm not sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can kind of give you some additional information on the Bearcats Everywhere. So the application is out there for students to apply for. Students are basically notified and they're being reviewed every day for ones that are coming in. So Isaac, if you've successfully submitted your application, it should have kicked you back an email that says, thank you for your application. It's been submitted and it's being reviewed. I can take a note of your name and definitely double check with our financial aid processing team. It's not something that my team awards, but we could definitely ask just to kind of get a status update specifically for you. But they're pretty quick with their responses. So as long as it successfully went through, you should hear something within a few days.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Do we have any other questions on anything?
All right, well, thank you everyone for coming. I hope you learned some things. I know I did. Thank you so much to Sydney and to Dr. Highest for joining us and sharing all this information. I hope that you are having a wonderful first semester here as a grad Bearcat. We're thrilled that you're here. Please check out all the other sessions. As Sydney mentioned, we're planning on hosting some more later on in the semester, specifically targeting topics. Taxes definitely be one of those. And if there's anything you would like to see, please let us know. I believe there is a survey. Yes, Chan? Is there a follow-up after this? Yes. So please fill that out.
All of the sessions, grads will be getting surveys. Yes.
Okay, super. So if there's anything you'd like to know more about, we are happy to hold sessions about the information that you need. So thank you again, everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful Monday. And thank you so much, Sydney.
Bye. Thank you for having me. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for coming. Don't forget to reach out to your